Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How we doing? Spectre here for another edition of Midnight Rider here on the morning side of the clock here today on this now the first day of March. Good to have you aboard. Today on the broadcast, we're going to talk about what happened at CPAC yesterday, as everybody anticipated, waiting for Donald J. Trump to speak. We're going to take a look at some of the highlights in that here today and some of the fallout, I suppose, and what was to be expected. Maybe have a little bit of a discussion with you guys in chat, see what you guys thought in that regard. So stick around. I'll see you back here momentarily on the other side. Public Law 112-239, January 2nd, 2013, 126 Stat 1957. The General Authorization, Section 501A. The Secretary and the Broadcasting Board of Governors are authorized to use funds appropriated or otherwise made available for public diplomacy, information programs to provide for the preparation, dissemination, and use of information intended for foreign audiences abroad about the United States, its people, and its policies through press, publications, radio, media including social media, and through information centers, instructors, and other direct or indirect means of communication. Non-domestic distribution of program material. Section B. Rule of construction. Nothing in this is construed to prohibit the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors from engaging in any form of communication, either directly or indirectly, because a United States domestic audience is or exposed to program material, or based on a presumption of such exposure. Such material may be made available within the United States and disseminated, when appropriate, pursuant to Sections 502 and 1005 of the United States Information and Educational Exchange Act of 1948, 22 U.S.C. 1462 and 1437, except that nothing in this section may be construed to authorize the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors to disseminate in the United States any prepared for dissemination abroad on or before the effective date of Section 1078 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2013. Welcome to the NDAA 2013. The groundwork is being laid. Flash forward to July 2013. Out of foreign policy, the U.S. repeals propaganda ban, spreads government-made news to Americans. For decades, a so-called anti-propaganda law prevented the U.S. government's mammoth broadcasting arm from delivering programs to American audiences. This led to House Resolution 5736, otherwise known as the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012, which legalized propaganda to be broadcast here within these United States, and signed into law by 44. December 2016, out of signs the Countering Disinformation and Propaganda Act into law. Our enemies are using foreign propaganda and disinformation against our allies. The U.S. government has been with this bill, now law, we are finally signaling that enough is enough. And within that article, we get to find out about the NDAA of 2017 underneath Senate Bill 2943. In conjunction, we find out about House Resolution 5181, otherwise the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016, also brought up in the Senate under 2690, called the Countering Information Warfare Act of 2016. All brought to us by the combination. The bill promotes the coordinated strategy to defend America, allies against propaganda and disinformation from Russia and others. And just like that, the U.S. Ministry of Truth is officially born. All not to gotta get big tech involved, right? Flash forward into September 2017. Why is Google hiring thousands of journalists to flood newsrooms around America? Well, I think we know the answer to that. It's a rhetorical question. And of course, Facebook to invest in local. All of that leading into the communications decentralized known as Section 2. One Love 47 U.S. Code Section 230. Protection for private blocking and screening of offensive material. A lot in the news about that here lately, and whether or not big tech can actually hide behind that, right? Flash forward into September 2019, out of Breitbart, Facebook, in court filings defending itself from a lawsuit filed by activist and congressional candidate Laura Loomer, has cited its First Amendment right as contradicting public claims by the company that it's a social media service is a platform. Whoops. And of course, not to be outdone, Judicial Watch has this. Most of Facebook's censorship board has ties to left-wing billionaire George Soros. America, our First Amendment is, has, and continues to be under assault. Realize. This has been by Breaking Spectre. Alright, welcome back everybody. A little bit of a long intro this morning. Always good to play the old PSAs and that, just as a pleasant reminder as to what has gotten us to this point. And the reason I do that obviously is not only from an educational standpoint, but also to make sure that you share with your friends and family so they understand the propaganda and the tactics and that used by the left against us. So hence why I play those, and good to have you aboard again. For those of you guys on YouTube, good to have you aboard. Twitch, D-Live up here this morning, as well as our friends over on the Tiger Network here this morning. Good to have you guys aboard over there as well. If you're not subscribed to all of the various platforms, I would highly recommend that you do. In this age of censorship, you never know when one of the channels may drop off. So if you're on YouTube, get over to D-Live, make sure you subscribe, over to Twitch, over to Torah 3, whichever, and we will go from there. Alright, so the crux of today's topic obviously is what happened yesterday by way of what happened at old CPAC. So let's just get into it here. Start off with CPAC Sunday out of Gateway Pundit. Goya Food CEO Robert Unanu declares Trump the legitimate and still actual president. That's interesting, and of course, if you've paid attention over the last week, you've heard a lot of people say, probably, that this was more or less a State of the Union address by the president. And so I guess it might even beg the question, why have we not seen a State of the Union from creepy Uncle Joe at this point? Granted, it's not constitutionally mandated, but nonetheless, even Trump did back in 2017 after a little bit of a flap back then, if you recall. Nonetheless, Robert Unanu, the CEO of Goya Food, spoke today at the CPAC convention at the Hyatt Regency in Orlando. During his speech, the Goya Food CEO called out the fraud in the 2020 election and declared Trump president. Unanu told the cheering pro-Trump CPAC crowd that Donald Trump is not only his president still, but also the legitimate president of the United States. Via Raw Story, Robert Unanu, my biggest honor today is going to be that, I think, we're going to be on the same stage as, in my opinion, the real, the legitimate, and the still actual President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. I received, I think, as many people I know, and maybe many of you, unsolicited ballots. So, I mean, as a citizen in the United States, I think I'm allowed to vote once. Once, not twice. So, we'll let this clip play through here.
Yes.
My biggest honor today is going to be that I think we're going to be on the same stage as, in my opinion, the real, the legitimate, and the still actual President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. I received, I think as many people I know, and maybe many of you, unsolicited ballots. So, I mean, as a citizen of the United States, I think I'm allowed to vote once, not twice.
Renee, how long can they keep going? Well, I guess they can go forever, question the legitimacy of President Biden, but how long can they perpetuate the big lie about the election being stolen?
The big lie lives. The big lie is what the Republican Party is going to shape its future around. The idea that the election was somehow stolen, the idea that somehow there was this massive voter fraud that took the election away from the rightful winner, Donald Trump. They are simply going to do this because they feel it fires up their base. You know, an important thing to remember in this, Jonathan, and this is going back to what Representative Kingsinger said, is this idea that the Republican Party cannot be a party of fear. But it ignores the fact that Donald Trump is the natural result of 50 plus years of fear, racism, and recrimination. Donald Trump.
All right, that's about enough out of Miss Boston Globe here and the Mockingbird media. The typical tropes in that they can't seem to find reality with both hands, and, well, you know how the saying goes. Nonetheless, yeah, that is a story. They're going to continue to ride that narrative to their grave, and so let's just carry on. From America First to America Last, Trump blasts Biden, all but announces 2024 run in lengthy CPAC speech. So Donald Trump stole the show at CPAC on Sunday as expected. And so I'm going to jump to the bottom where the original article stated and then come back forward here, and we'll hit all the various clips. Let's see. As we previously detailed, American Conservative Union, the host of the conference, invited the former president to speak at CPAC. I'd love to see him come to CPAC, CIU Chairman Matt Schlapp told the Washington Examiner. Schlapp said he extended the invitation personally. I think he deserves to be heard. I think even people who disagree with him will agree that he deserves to be heard. He should be uncanceled, he added. An official close to the planning process told Epoch Times that the invitation was sent out last year. Trump appears to be more active in the political arena after the conclusion of his second impeachment trial. He issued a lengthy statement confronting Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, his speech against him, and appeared on several media outlets to saluting Rush Limbaugh after the death of the iconic conservative radio commentator. He issued a dire warning to Americans about socialism in his 2020 CPAC speech. Far-left radicals have become increasingly desperate and increasingly dangerous in their quest to transform America into a country you would not recognize, a country in which they control every aspect of American life, he said. Just as socialist and communist movements have done all over the world, they're cracking down on all dissent and demanding absolute conformity. They want total control. Trump warned that the result of implementing such policies would turn America very quickly into a large-scale Venezuela. And this thing's had about 170-some thousand views, so a good one to go back to. And again, we'll hit the highlights here now. Coming back across as a hotly anticipated 90-minute speech, and yes, it was a rather long speech yesterday. Pretty typical, I would say, of a Trump rally, I would venture to say. The former president slammed the Biden administration, renewed accusations that the 2020 election was rigged, while hinting at another run, joking at one point that he may decide to beat them for a third time to a loud round of applause. So let's hit this one out of Daily Caller.
The windmills that don't work when you need them. Joe Biden has had the most disastrous first month of any president in modern history. That's true. Already the Biden administration has proven that they are anti-jobs, anti-family, anti-borders, anti-energy, anti-women, and anti-science. In just one short month, we have gone from America First to America Last. You think about it, right? America Last. There's the windmills that don't work when you need them.
Yep, and so just like POTUS DJT says there, you know, it did not take long, less than 30 days, right, for us to get a glimpse of where the rest of the country is going to head underneath a Biden/Harris administration. That is, if we allow it. Another one here. Donald Trump Jr. highlights. It says, I may even decide to beat them a third time. Donald Trump talking about the Dems in 2024. I see him all the time, but I still miss him on the world stage. Simply awesome.
But who knows? Who knows? I may even decide to beat them for a third time, okay? Beat them for a third time. Joe Biden defunded the border wall.
Is he wrong for saying that? I don't think so. Frankly, let the facts come out. Why are the Dems so afraid of the facts instead of a narrative that they continue to falsely push? Daily Caller had this as, with your help, we will take back the House, we will win the Senate, and then a Republican president will make a triumphant return to the White House. And I wonder who that will be.
Yeah, we're tougher than they are. We're stronger than they are. Together in the coming years, we will carry forward the torch of American liberty. We will lead the conservative movement and the Republican Party back to a totally conclusive victory, and we've had tremendous victories. Don't ever forget it. With your help, we will take back the House. We will win the Senate, and then a Republican president will make a triumphant return to the White House. And I wonder who that will be. I wonder who that will be. Who will that be? I wonder. Standing before you today, I am...
So there you go. Of course, perhaps alluding to a 2024 run. We shall see. Trump also called for voter ID while also hitting President Biden over vaccine misinformation.
We must have voter ID. Voter ID. You know, to get into the Democrat National Convention, when they had the convention, you needed voter ID. You needed an ID card. You couldn't get in unless you had an ID. So many people told me you can't get in that place, you need ID. Nobody had ID. You need voter ID. They know that. This is a con job. They're conning everybody. They know that. We must have...
And so I wish he would have expounded on that just perhaps a little bit more yesterday. Because here's the thing, folks. If you're paying attention to what's going on out in California, which I'm sure the Mockingbird media is making sure that you do not see, old Governor Newsom's up to his neck in folks net looking to recall him. And guess what happens on the back side of that process? Well, you have to collect signatures. And not only do you have to collect enough signatures to the tune of about 1.5 million to put it on a ballot, but you better be damn sure that you have enough signatures to compensate for those that they may wish to throw out. And of course, I think they're probably going to look for probably another 400,000 over top of the required 1.5 million. Now, don't you find that awful funny that on the front side of the process to get elected, signatures do not matter and voter ID, but yet when you go to yank somebody from office for doing a piss-poor job that suddenly signatures matter? It seems like we're in bizarro world in that regard, and so that's just one of many things. And then number two, I brought this up on air yesterday when we were talking about this on the 5x5 channel, and that is this. We're not going to have a midterm or a 2024 vote unless we, the people, get the Dominion and Smartmatic and ENES voting systems the hell off the land, period. Those have got to go. There is no reason in this day and age that we need to have any sort of electronic balloting system within our various precincts, counties, or otherwise. and therefore it is going to be up to us. We're not going to get this from the top down. It's going to have to be a grassroots campaign by we the people to uproot and toss the frickin' machines in the nearest ocean. And I think that was kind of similar to what I said yesterday on air. Find the nearest ocean and pitch those suckers right in it. Get them off the land. My opinion. Nonetheless, Newsmax had this. Trump hits Biden on his comments about vaccine availability before he took office. I actually believe he said that because he didn't really know what the hell was happening, and he's probably right.
Yet Biden said just a few days ago that when he got here, meaning the White House, there was no vaccine. He said there's no vaccine? Oh, good. Say it again, Joe. Now, I don't think he said that, frankly, in a malicious way. I really don't. I actually believe he said that because he didn't really know what the hell was happening. But never let them forget this was us. We did this, and the distribution is moving along according to our plan, and it's moving along really well. We had the military, what they've done, our generals, and all of the people, what they've done is incredible. But remember, we took care of a lot of people, including, I guess, on December 21st, we took care of Joe Biden because he got his shot. He got his vaccine. He forgot. It shows you how unpainful that vaccine shot is. So everybody go get your shot. He forgot. So it wasn't very traumatic, obviously, but he got his shot. And it's good that he got his shot.
So there you have it. I'm going to come back to that one toward the end because I've got a lot more to say about the whole vaccine side and Trump's push on that. So remind me at the end here. I will touch upon that. There's no reason whatsoever why the vast majority of young Americans should not be back in school immediately. The only reason that most parents do not have that choice is because Joe Biden sold out America's children to the teachers' unions, said Trump, adding, on behalf of the moms, dads, and children of America, I call on Joe Biden to get the schools open and get them open now. And for those who don't remember, I believe old crazy Uncle Joe decided it was going to be about 100 days before that happened, and in the meantime, we see that the teachers' unions are pitching a fit. Well, they like to sit on their lazy asses at home, not do a thing, and continue to collect paychecks per their union bosses.
Refused to let him answer. They refused to let him answer the questions. Maybe we could have found something, or if the media did its job, which they don't. Their callous indifference to working family is equally clear when it comes to the critical matter of getting America's children back to school. And they must get back and get back right now. Right now. Crazy. Terrible. Terrible. The Biden administration is actually bragging about the classroom education they are providing to migrant children on the border, while at the same time millions of American children are having their futures destroyed by Joe Biden's anti-science school closures. Think of it. We're educating students on the border, but our own people, the children of our citizens themselves, are not getting the education that they deserve. There's no reason whatsoever why the vast majority of young Americans should not be back in school immediately. The only reason that most parents do not have that choice is because Joe Biden sold out America's children to the teachers' unions. His position is morally inexcusable, you know that. Joe Biden has shamefully betrayed America's youth, and he is cruelly keeping our children locked in their homes. No reason for it whatsoever. They want to get out.
So there you go, him talking about the situation with the kids, of course, and like I said, the teachers' unions appear to be the ones in control of the situation. So Of course, what did we see over the course of the last year with all the lockdown campaigns and the rollout of COVID and everything else? Well, there was a lot of online learning, and of course, some schools opted to open and carry on a normal school year in August of last year, and there are those in big cities that did not. And so the question is, at this point, in my mind, is what is the usefulness of teachers' unions, other than to protect the teachers against having to actually get up, go to work, and actually do their stinking jobs and educate kids? Do we really need them? Or should we as parents be taking our kids back out of the system, having our own choices to do the teaching instead? Let's break the damn unions. Nonetheless, scroll down for more clips. Here we go. We got Trump arrives, and of course, yesterday I was following RSBN exclusively behind the scenes, and apparently they were on the wrong side of the street as this took place. Saw them hot-foot it down, and I think they missed the tail end of it, but here we go. So there we go, the motorcade rolling in behind the scenes. Kissed and hugged the flag as he entered the stage. That's a picture we have seen many a time before. Trump began his speech to a crowd spilling over with excitement. Washington Examiner had this, of course.
CPAC, do you miss me yet? Do you miss me? A lot of things going on.
So there you go. That was to kick things off. And the journey we started 4 years ago is far from over. Jennifer Franco says former President Trump addresses conservatives at CPAC 2021. Our movement of hardworking American patriots is just getting started. And in the end, we will win.
Our movement of proud, hardworking, and you know what this is? The hardest working people, hardworking American patriots, is just getting started. And in the end, we will win. We will win. We've been doing a lot of winning. As we gather this week, we're in the middle of a historic struggle for America's future, America's culture, and America's institutions, borders, and most cherished principles. Our security, our prosperity, and our very identity as Americans is at stake, like perhaps at no other time. So no matter how much the Washington establishment and the powerful special interests may want to silence us, let there be no doubt we will be victorious, and America will be stronger and greater than ever before.
So there you go. It says, and I'm not starting a new party. That was fake news. Plan is to have a united GOP, not to divide and conquer. So if you remember right, here a couple weeks back, there was this big flap about whether or not a Patriot Party was actually indeed going to be started. We saw the FEC filings in that, and of course those filings had absolutely nothing to do with DJT. A statement was issued at that time, and of course he more or less disavowed it. And so obviously I think at this point he's probably just going to more or less break the party into what he wants it to be, and people will either get in line or you'll get the old establishment folks, and that will just jump ship and become a Dem. Here we get this out of Daily Caller.
Side, we will do what we've done right from the beginning, which is to win. We're not starting new parties. You know, they kept saying, he's going to start a brand new party. We have the Republican Party. It's going to unite and be stronger than ever before. I am not starting a new party. That was fake news. Fake news, no. Wouldn't that be brilliant? Side, we will.
So there we have that. And Trump predicts withering losses for Dems in 2020. I'm assuming they meant 2022. And adds, I may even decide to beat them for a third time.
and coyotes is dangerous, immoral, and indefensible. Hard to believe it's happening. Biden has failed in his number one duty as chief executive, enforcing America's laws. This alone should be reason enough for Democrats to suffer withering losses in the midterms and to lose the White House decisively 4 years from now. Actually, as you know, they just lost the White House, but it's one of those things. But who knows? Who knows? I may even decide to beat them for a third time, okay? Beat them for a third time.
So there you have that, throwing down the gauntlet, as it were. Says, we are sure the MSM will be triggered over this. Trump Dems used the China virus as an excuse to change all of the election rules without the approval of their state legislatures. It had a massive impact on the election, and of course it did.
To find the Republican Party in the years ahead. Very simple. It's really quite simple, isn't it? Another one of the most urgent issues facing the Republican Party is that of ensuring fair, honest, and secure elections. Such a disgrace, such a disgrace. Such a disgrace. We must pass comprehensive election reforms, and we must do it now. The Democrats used the China virus as an excuse to change all of the election rules without the approval of their state legislatures, making it therefore illegal. It had a massive impact on the election. Again, you have to go to the legislatures to get these approvals. This alone would have easily changed the outcome of the election at levels that you wouldn't have even believed. Even with COVID, even with all of the things, the numbers are staggering. We can never let this or other abuses of the 2020 election be repeated or happen again. Can never let that happen again. You see what's going on. We've been set back so greatly.
So there you have that, and of course one of the things that we're going to have to keep an eye on is the Sidney Powell case, where Dominion has opted to sue her. We've got Mike Lindell, obviously, another $1.3 billion case, as well as Rudy Giuliani, $1.3 billion. Interesting how the 13s keep showing up in that regard. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And on top of that, the thing about that is that these guys could all potentially turn around and countersue people like Dominion and Smartmatic, who have now thrown their hat in the ring, as it were, to sue the individuals for defamation, which is going to be very hard to prove. But the thing I think that stands out most to me is the very fact that fraud, and I've said this a number of times, F-R-A-U-D, has no statute of limitations. Therefore, it can be contested at any time, anywhere, any place, on any grounds. And so it's going to be a fun thing to watch when these get spun back around on them. You see Sidney Powell, Giuliani, Lindell all ask for discovery, produce the documents, introduce all their evidence into a court of law, and it's going to be a firestorm to watch. So stay tuned in that regard. Trump slammed the cancel culture as well. We reject cancel culture.
And in particular, we reject cancel culture. We know that the rule of law is the ultimate, and in particular,
And what I find absolutely humorous about that is I'm scrolling through stories here this morning. I see that there's an article that a class about cancel culture got canceled because somebody had issues with it. So the old Sun Tzu stuff comes to mind here, where they will just eat themselves up and we'll watch them continue to take themselves out. It's absolutely fun to watch. And he blasted the big tech censorship of conservative voices. There is no debate because they refuse to allow our side to even speak or be heard.
It's called other things, but it's called common sense, so they don't want it to break. The time has come to break up big tech monopolies and restore fair competition. Republicans, conservatives must open up our platforms and repeal Section 230 liability protections. And if the federal government refuses to act, then every state in the union where we have the votes, which is a lot of them, big tech giants like Twitter, Google, and Facebook, should be punished with major sanctions whenever they silence conservative voices. And Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida and in Texas and in other states are doing this. If they do what they're doing, Florida...
So there you have it, talking about tech censorship, and of course he's absolutely right. If you look at the landscape, what's playing out, this is a 10th Amendment issue. This shouldn't even necessarily have to be a Section 230 issue at this point. We cannot expect the government to reform itself. They're going to try and exploit that loophole and the fact that they can both serve as not only a publisher, but also a what's the other word I'm looking for? Not a legislator, but a utility. They can serve as a utility as well. And of course, if you've paid attention to Laura Loomer's lawsuits now, you know, and just like what I described in the PSA at the head of the show here, it was admitted in a court of law per her lawsuits. Facebook was forced to admit that they are indeed a publisher. So you cannot have it both ways. So that being said, it's going to be interesting to watch. We've got states like what he described, Texas. You've got Florida. You've got Montana, I believe, who have all put forth legislation that says, hey, if you're going to try and censor us, we're going to find the living crap out of you. We've even seen countries outside of the U.S. do this, Poland being one of them. And I think we just saw some flap here recently about Australia as well, and going head-to-head with both Facebook and Google at this point, on what sort of royalties their publishers may get from either platform. So, again, there are a number of ways that this can be combated, and let's hope that these states and individuals as well use whatever is proper and necessary. What does Trumpism mean? Well, Trumpism means strong borders, no riots in the streets. It means law enforcement. It means very strong protection for the Second Amendment. It means support for the forgotten men and women who have been taken advantage of for so many years. That a tweet via Daily Caller. All right, so before I continue on to the last article I have talking about Trump at CPAC and more on the tech side, coming back around, not going to use circle back, I don't want to throw my Seki-isms in here, but nonetheless, talk a little bit about the vaccine side of things. If there's any one area that stands out to me as probably maybe a little bit problematic is this whole push for the vaccine. And I'm kind of the belief at this point, without verified proof, that you got people that are greatly influencing Trump in that regard. Whether it be Jared Kushner or whoever that may be, all one has to do is look at the landscape of what has played out with the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, the damages incurred there, whether it be the Moderna, whether it be the Pfizer, and now here as of yesterday or Saturday, Johnson & Johnson now getting the go-ahead from the FDA for the jab as well. What I want to know is, show me the bad data on the Sputnik 5. You're seeing a lot of countries, both in the EU, Mexico, and worldwide, accepting the Sputnik 5, which was indeed the first jab that made it onto the marketplace. And of course, the West turned a blind eye to that. But show me bad data. Show me anything that says anything bad about the Sputnik 5 at this point. The bottom line is this. Do we necessarily need to have the vaccines? No. There's a lot of things that we can do to boost our own immune systems. You're not going to hear Trump talk about that, although once upon a time we heard him talk about the right to try. But at the same time, you're definitely not going to hear the Mockingbird media go out and say, hey, boost your immune system. Why? Because it's not profitable to them. And they can't sell you the fear about ID 2020s and getting back into the economy and having folks like IATA and that on the airlines industries and that saying, oh, you can't fly now without having your vaccine passport and all these things that the EU, Israel, and everybody else wants to push so that you can regain entry into the economy, right? Well, I foresee a day where it's going to be pretty well a scenario where there's going to be an underground economy that exists for a very long time to combat this tyranny that is upon us. All right, enough about that. So let's get on to the tech side of things here. Let's talk about this out of Epoch Times. Trump, big tech companies should be punished for censoring conservative voices. And along the lines of what I just described, big tech companies such as Twitter, Google, and Facebook should face major penalties if they continue to engage in censorship of conservative voices, Trump told an audience at the Conservative Political Action Conference. The former president, in his first major appearance since leaving office, took the opportunity to renew calls to sanction Silicon Valley companies that have engaged in what is perceived to be unbalanced moderation of user content that typically targets conservative voices and viewpoints. The time has come to break up big tech monopolies and restore fair competition, Trump said during his address on Sunday. Big tech giants like Twitter, Google, Facebook should be punished with major sanctions whenever they silence conservative voices. Trump and his administration have been calling for the abolishment of or reforms to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act to remove liability protections for companies that engage in the censoring of political speech. They have accused the companies of acting as publishers rather than online platforms when they engage in targeted moderation of user content. Protections under Section 230 aren't intended to be used to protect publishers. A number of antitrust investigations into big tech companies are underway. The Justice Department previously said they have opened antitrust probes into major digital technology firms and have filed a lawsuit against Google over anti-competitive allegations. Similarly, Texas has also filed its own antitrust lawsuit against Google. Some states are exploring legislation to prevent big tech companies from using their monopoly to police speech they don't agree with. Florida proposed that it would seek to penalize social media companies that deplatform candidates during an election. And of course, that is probably in response to what somebody like Laura Loomer experienced, who had no social media presence during her campaign this last election cycle. The legislation would fine companies $100K a day until the candidate access to the platform is restored. Texas is also considering similar legislation. Many of the regulatory moves were made in response to increased policing of user speech, in particular during the lead-up to the November 3rd election and after the January 6th breach of the U.S. Capitol. The social media company's moderation saw Trump's account permanently suspended on Twitter and indefinitely banned on Facebook and Instagram. An appeal over Facebook's decision to ban Trump is currently under consideration by what is said to be an independent oversight commission paid for by the platform. Republicans and conservatives must open up our platforms and repeal Section 230 liability protections. And if the federal government refuses to act, then every state in the union where we have the votes, which is a lot of them, Trump said. He praised Florida and Texas for their willingness to address the issue. If Republicans can be censored for speaking the truth and calling out corruption, we will not have democracy, and we will have only left-wing tyranny, he added. Meanwhile, these digital behemoths also are facing pushback from governments around the world that are concerned over the power these companies yield over public discourse and business competition. Australia is the latest country to pass legislation making Google and Facebook pay for news content. The law backs public interest journalism and aims to provide a level playing field between these platforms and media companies, which have been losing advertising revenue to these platforms. Other countries have signaled an intention to follow in the footsteps of Australia. And I believe one of those here recently that we saw was actually old Trudeau and company up in Canada. The unconstitutional attack. While big tech is policing speech in the private sphere, Dems in Congress are rapidly attempting to push forward the passage of a bill known as House Resolution 1, or dubiously named for the People Act, that conservatives warn would further limit political speech. Rep. John Sarbanes, who introduced the 2021 version of the bill, said it seeks to overcome rampant voter suppression, gerrymandering, and a torrent of special interest dark money in American elections. However, critics say the bill also imposes new restrictions on speech about the campaign, as well as prevents Americans from publishing and organizing into groups and to advocate their government. H.R. 1 and Senate 1 would force onerous and unworkable standards upon the ability of Americans and groups of Americans to discuss the policy issues of the day with elected officials and the public. The Institute of Free Speech said in a blog post, other provisions would violate the privacy of advocacy groups and their supporters, stringently regulate political speech online, and compel speakers to include lengthy government-mandated messages, identifying some of their supporters by name in their communications. Trump, during his speech, warned about the enactment of such legislation, saying it would empower the federal government to shut down dissent and turn the Federal Election Commission into a partisan political weapon. We have no time to waste. Nancy Antoinette and the Dems in Congress are racing to pass a flagrantly, unconstitutional attack on the First Amendment and the integrity of our elections known as House Resolution 1, he said. He also raised concerns over some of the bill's proposals, such as eliminating voter ID requirements and letting unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats in charge of drawing congressional districts through independent redistricting commissions. This monster must be stopped. It cannot be allowed to pass, he said. Now, more than ever, is the time for tough, strong, and energetic Republican leaders who have spines of steel. We need strong leadership. We cannot have leaders who show more passion for condemning their fellow Americans than they have ever shown for standing up to Dems, to the media, and the radicals who want to turn America into a socialist country. And that's exactly true. Because at the end of the day, as Trump made mention yesterday, guess who is doing a lot of the vetting and that of the candidates for midterms and otherwise? Donald Trump. And not only that, what did he say is probably the biggest asset one can have in their arsenal of stuff as they run? That is actually having the endorsement of Donald Trump. Probably the biggest asset that they can have. It carries a lot of political clout. And no, if you look at it from that standpoint as well, the Dems, or the Republicans rather, who voted voted for impeaching Trump, voted for impeaching Trump, a lot of the Republicans on that list have now found their butts on the ringer, having now been censored by their folks back at home for that very reason. So there you go, folks. Just a quick little update here today in regards to the CPAC yesterday that Donald J. Trump partook in. Hopefully you found it useful. Go ahead and share this across all the platforms that you guys are on. Get the word out as usual. Thank you for stopping in, and we'll see you back here shortly on the next one. Take care. God bless, everybody.